Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Dear students, Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 is a complete testing and revision course for the upcoming prelims examination. The program will help you prepare for UPSC prelims through a step-up approach. It is a meticulously designed study plan to organize your preparation and keep you on track towards covering the prelims GS and CSAT syllabus extensively from NCERT to the advanced level. The goal of our Prelims Test Series 2021 program is to exhaustively cover all standard sources of study material, including NCERT, with a study plan to test you at par with UPSC level of questions, thereby improving your chances of clearing the prelims examination. To give multiple revision of the entire syllabus from the perspective of civil service prelims pattern. The test series program will also give you the final revision of all topics and themes before the examination through QIP videos and prelims compass notes. The QIP videos or Quality Improvement Program videos are for speedy revision of all important topics for the upcoming prelims examination. QIP videos are kind of crash course for the prelims examination. And prelims compass are 8 subject-wise prelims compilation of all static and current affair topics important for the upcoming prelims. Rao's IAS Prelims Test Series 2021 will include topics test, testing the concept of candidate. It will include thematic test on both the concept and the current affair of that particular theme. It will also include current affair tests covering the monthly current affairs. And there will be full-length test before the final exam to simulate you for the D-Day. There is a link in the description of this video. You can click on the link for registration and to also check out the demo QIP videos. Now we shall have discussion on today's newspaper, The Hindu, Delhi edition dated 12 January 2021. We shall pick up articles important for civil service examination and discuss them as per the demand of the exam. The articles that we are going to take up for discussion have been tabulated in front of you, and the time stamping for the same has been given in the description section. A step back in gender equality. This article from page number 7 has been written in the context of the unpaid care work and domestic work that women do all around the world. The immediate reason for writing this article is the call from Kamal Hassan's political party to compensate women for their unpaid work in monetary terms. The author inquired into the question, is public policy compensating the domestic and care work in monetary terms a progressive one? Look, there is no denial of the fact that the burden of domestic and care work unevenly comes on women. The work that they do domestically, from cooking to cleaning, fetching water and firewood, taking care of children and elderly, that according to UN Women is around 2.5 times more than the similar work done by men. And there is an opportunity cost for that. As a result of this, women can participate less in the labor force, or if at all they do, they have to cope with the dual burden of both paid and unpaid work. The unpaid work that women do, according to some rudimentary calculation by UN Women, amounts to 10% of GDP. This is for middle income country. For poor country, this can go as high as 60%, for example, in case of Tanzania. The unpaid domestic work that women do, that may amount to around 40% of manufacturing, commerce and transportation sector. But despite this, it is not considered as work in strict economic sense because it is not taken into account while calculation of GDP. And the burden of domestic work is increasing on account of climate change. The issue is of course a very important one, and this has been recognized in Sustainable Development Goals as well. SDG 5.4 encourages nations to recognize this unpaid work of women, develop infrastructure and public policy to reduce them, and promote shared responsibility in family and social institutions to redistribute the burden. The first step in solving any problem, and the one that is in hand, is recognition of the problem. Although we know it in many other ways that there is uneven burden of domestic work on women, and we also know the implication of that. For instance, India has been ranked 112th out of 153 countries in the Global Gender Gap Index 2020, released by World Economic Forum. We also know that the female labor force participation rate in Indian economy has decreased from 37% to around 24%. But formally, the recognition has come in the form of time use survey that was done last year. National Statistical Office did last year time use survey for India for the very first time for the period of January to December 2019. And this formally, for the first time, officially has quantified the uneven burden of domestic and care work that comes on women. As you can see from this data, on an average, men spend around 18% of their time in employment and related activities. Correspondingly, women spend only 4.2%. When you talk about unpaid domestic work, the number almost reverses. Around 19.5% of the time of women goes into unpaid domestic work or caregiving services. Correspondingly, the proportion for men reduces. The proportion of time in learning for men is higher than women. For socialization for men is also higher than women. The survey also gives data that around 81% of females and only 26% of males participate in unpaid domestic work. The burden of unpaid work comes even more on rural women. So the first step is done officially of recognizing this problem of uneven burden by the time use survey by National Statistical Office. The author in the article uses the work of Diane Elson, a feminist economist, that public policy must aim at closing the huge gender gap in unpaid domestic and care work through 3 R's. One is recognition of the problem. Then, using technology, development of infrastructure and public policy, there must be attempt to reduce that burden. And then, social institutions must be reformed in such a way that there is shared responsibility and distribution of domestic work, so that again there is reduction of the domestic work coming on women. The author is of the opinion that a wage or monetization of domestic and care work that women do is a formal recognition of the problem. It is also recognition of the fact that work that women do as household chores are not less important. The significance of that in economy and society as a whole is huge. But however, paying women a wage for domestic and care work will not reduce their burden. It will rather carry a possible danger of reinforcing the stereotypes and social norms that domestic work are responsibility of women and now they are being paid for that. And that will carry the risk of furthering the gender disparity. In any ways, that is not going to help the redistribution of the burden. The patriarchal distribution of work that we have presently in most societies, that will be reinforced. That is why author is skeptical of any good coming from monetary compensation for domestic work. And hence the title, A Step Back in Gender Equality. See, women and men's opportunities and behaviors are determined as much by social institutions as it is determined by conditions of communities and countries, their economies, and other social parameters like health, education, etc., etc. By defining which behaviors are deemed acceptable or unacceptable in society, social institutions influence gender roles. And that begins the stereotyping. For example, working for pay is considered a masculine task, while unpaid care work is seen as women's domain in most of the societies. That is why social institutions must be targeted if there at all has to be any reduction or redistribution of the burden. Social institutions and gender index, although it has not been updated for a very long time, but it had 5 parameters for calculation of the index. It takes into account the family codes, the informal, discriminatory family codes that restricts women's decision-making capacity. The right to physical integrity of women that decides women's control over their bodies. Prevalence of sun bias, which economic survey has again and again highlighted the meta-sun preference that Indian society has. The index also takes into account the restricted resources and entitlements. For instance, in India, less than 5% women own any immovable asset, and it includes parameters like civil liberties that decides women's access to public and political space. So in a way, the answer to the question that author raised, that will such a policy of monetary compensation benefit women at all, can come from here. Although monetary compensation recognizes the unpaid work and the significance of that, but without changes in social institutions working, the norms in the society, there will not be any reduction and redistribution of the burden. On the contrary, there could be hardening of stereotypical roles and hence no escape from the burden. To change a social phenomena, society must change. Economy cannot be the answer. Having said that, public policies do have a role in influencing the social norms and social institutions. For example, reduction on women's unpaid work can be done through public policies. If you bring drinking water supply to households, women will not have to go long distances to bring drinking water. If you give LPG connection through Ujjwala Yojana, women don't have to go long distances to fetch firewoods. If you give LED bulbs, the work women do at homes can be done with more ease. According to one UN study in 2011, when there was expansion in rural electrification in South Africa, there was a spike of 9% increase in female labor force participation rate. Similarly, it has been seen that increasing public and care services ease the burden of women. In India, there is an NGO, Mobile Krishe, which provide childcare services for employed women at construction sites. Measures like this will obviously help working mothers to have a better work-life balance. Similarly, expanded preschool hours will help working mothers. For example, it was seen in Kenya that when government decided to give preschool education to children of 4 to 5 years, female labor force participation rate increased. So public policies to certain extent can do reduction of women's unpaid work burden. Public policies, although not as effectively as social institution norms, can do redistribution of the unpaid work. For example, the maternity leave that is provided by most government. 14 weeks is a standard given by ILO, but we provide much more than that. Maternity leave help women to remain in the labor force. Certain countries also provide paternity leave. Countries like Sweden provide paternity leave to fathers. Such public policies can help in redistribution of care responsibilities. Similarly, flexible work schedule, arrangement of work from home can help women cope up with a double responsibility of both paid and unpaid work. Public policies can also encourage women's participation in the labor force. For example, encouraging textile industry. This is a strategy that Government of India has used for a long time, because female labor force is in higher demand in textile industries. And textile industries are encouraged in rural areas where women don't have to travel long distances to reach the workplace. Country like Japan uses the fiscal policy to encourage labor force participation. Couples were given tax incentive if both of them were working. And it was observed that because of such fiscal policy, there was almost 13% increment in labor force participation rate. However, the real change will always come from social institutions, and this must be the focus of all government. The real equalization of burden will only come if social norms are corrected and if gender stereotypes are removed. For instance, in Zimbabwe, the government ran a project called Africa's Male Empowerment Project. It tried to change the behavioral trends. It tried to break the stereotypes and increased male involvement in home-based care services. Such programs that tries to break the behavioral trend, tries to overcome the stereotypes prevailing in society, the difference of masculinity and femininity, Only that can bring lasting change vis-a-vis the problem of unequal distribution of unpaid work. All in all, you have to clinch with this. Whenever you answer a question regarding unpaid domestic and care work done by women, you have to highlight this fact that there must be recognition, reduction, and redistribution. Any public policy in this regard must focus on all these three R's. This news article is from page number 2. Delhi High Court has given permission to a woman to terminate her 28-week pregnancy. The permission from the High Court was granted on AIIMS Medical Board recommendation, which said that the fetus suffered anencephaly. The skull bone of the fetus was not formed. See, before 1971, abortion was criminalized under section 312 of Indian Penal Code 1860. After 1971, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971 allowed aborting the pregnancy by a doctor up till 12 weeks, which can be extended till 20 weeks. Till 12 weeks of pregnancy, abortion can be done on advice of a single doctor. After 12 weeks and before 20 weeks, abortion can be done on advice of 2 doctors. Ordinarily, there is no legal way of doing abortion after 20 weeks. However, abortion can be done at any point of time if there is immediate threat to life of the mother. An abortion till 20 weeks is not on the will of mother or family or anyone. Abortion could be done only if continuance of pregnancy poses risk to life of mother or would cause injury to her physical or mental health, or in case of fetal abnormality. Only when these conditions are met, then abortion till now legally can be done till 20 weeks under Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971. But as we have read and understood, Delhi High Court has given not to terminate 28-week pregnancy. This can be done on writ petition. To do complete justice, higher judiciary, high courts and Supreme Court can accept cases and allow termination of pregnancy even if that is not permitted by law. However, there has been long-term demand to increase this duration of 20 weeks. Out of all countries that allow termination of pregnancy, 52% allows it beyond 20 weeks on the condition of fetal abnormality. There are 23 countries that allow termination of pregnancy at any point if the mother wish. Also, the condition is such in India that contraceptive use is not highly prevalent. According to National Family Health Survey 4, only 8% of couples in country use modern contraceptive method and only 53% use any method at all. And this has resulted in high rate of abortion. Every year in India, 47 out of 1,000 women do abortion. Apart from these, there is one very important medical argument. A number of fetal abnormality is actually detected after 20th week, between 20th and 21st week of pregnancy. And if there is some delay in the scan, the mother will easily cross this crucial duration of 20th and 21st week. And in that case, she will not have a legal recourse to do termination of her pregnancy. Because of these reasons, there has been long-standing demand to increase the legally allowed time period beyond 20 weeks. Hence, in March, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Bill 2020 was introduced in Lok Sabha. It has been passed in Lok Sabha but still is pending in the Parliament. This bill, among various other things, seeks to increase the time period that legally a mother can get her pregnancy terminated from 20 weeks to 24 weeks. Previously, on advice of one doctor, mother can get her pregnancy terminated up till 12 weeks. This has been increased now till 20 weeks. Up till 20 weeks, advice of single doctor will do. From 20 to 24 weeks, recommendation of 2 doctors will be required. There is another very important amendment that the bill seeks to bring in the Act. After 24 weeks, pregnancy can still happen. But for that, recommendation has to come from a medical board, which under this Act, the state governments will form. And this medical board will take up case for certain categories of women. What will be those categories that has not been specified in the bill? Perhaps later, when the central government will lay down the rules for this Act, those categories will be specified. But it is indicative that the categories will include unwanted pregnancy in case of rape or when the mother is severely ill. Presently, ordinarily, there is no recourse for abortion after 20 weeks, even in case of rape. But the original act does have a provision of termination of pregnancy at any stage of pregnancy if there is threat to the life of mother. And this provision, of course, will stay even after the amendment.
Now, this news appears as a lead article on page number 6. It says, Reframing India's Foreign Policy Priorities. Apart from an ideational restructuring, prudent plans, achievable objectives, and a line of continuity are a must. So, these three are the important aspects which the author in this article has highlighted about India's foreign policy. Now, the author has mentioned these 3 points as a way forward based on the developments which have taken place in the international arena. And based on these ideas, the author has mentions about the international politics for the year 2021 based on past events, where the author in this article has mentioned about rise of an assertive China, power shift in United States and Europe relationships, especially in the backdrop of EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, major political developments in Europe, Eurasia, as well as West Asia. And based on these international developments, the author has mentioned about certain problems for an isolated India, especially in the backdrop of strained India-China relationship. The author says that if relations between India and China worsens, and if India's neighbors have to pick a side, then they may not shy away from picking China based on economic and strategic calculation. Further, the author has also mentioned about shift in India's foreign policy from the past. And it is here where he has concluded the article by saying that these three aspects are very important with respect to India's foreign policy, including prudent plans, achievable objectives, and line of continuity. So, based on this background, let us go through these important highlights of this article. Now, the first point discussed by the author is that despite power shift in United States, it is unlikely to change international politics. And the author also says that despite Joe Biden's promise to Europe, Europe has shifted from United States to China. And this can be said because of a very important agreement between European Union and China. This agreement is EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment. So Europe, rather than shifting towards United States, has drifted towards China. And this might impact future US Europe relationship, especially with respect to trade. Now, this EU China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment becomes important as it replaces 25 bilateral investment treaties which EU countries had signed with China prior to 2009. And because of signing of this agreement, it will ensure better market access for European Union countries. So now the European Union countries will have a larger consumer base in China vis-a-vis United States. Further, this agreement also includes provision on labor rights protection and also environment. So overall, the author highlights that despite this power shift in United States and despite Joe Biden's promise of a better US-Europe relationship, the EU-China Comprehensive Agreement on Investment might impact US-Europe relationship. Now, this EU-China agreement is also problematic for India because earlier United States as well as India were trying to corner China in international forum. However, with this agreement, the reverse seems to have happened as both US and India seems to be isolated because more countries are and may in the future come within the Chinese sphere of strategic and economic influence. And this not only includes European Union countries but also Russia. And all of this may pose a significant problem for India considering border tensions with China in the eastern Ladakh region. So overall the author argues that any chance of US or India to corner China has been shattered by Europe. Now, another issue highlighted by the author is regarding a stronger China, which will become a problem for India in the near future. Now, here the author says that for the year 2021 and forward, Chinese President Xi Jinping seems to have consolidated power. So, his power will increase, and this will be very significant in world politics, as we will see an assertive China in the near future applying heavy hands on various aspects of domestic and international politics. So it is in this backdrop that a growing China will become a problem for India, especially because of the fact that India has a disturbed relationship with its neighbors such as Nepal, Pakistan, etc. Further, China can say to be the only country in 2020 to have a positive growth rate. Now, this is a very important aspect as China will try to go for more agreements on investment with different countries, thereby bringing different countries within its sphere of influence. And this aspect will also be helped because China is poised to grow faster in the year 2021. Now, even military wise, China seems to be stronger and seeks to dominate the Indo Pacific Ocean region. Now, it is here where the role of Quad comes into picture. However, so far, India has been hesitant in partnering United States in the Indo-Pacific Ocean region. Now, another aspect which might concern India is that China is seeking to strengthen military ties with Russia. Now, a growing China-Russia relationship might have an adverse impact on India-Russia relationship as both Russia and China sees India almost as an ally of United States. And it is in this regard, Quad, which comprises of US, India, Japan, and Australia, is considered by most international affairs scholars as Asian NATO. Further, China refuses any arguments on the way it treats its domestic or international politics and is willing to apply heavy-handed approach in domestic matters as well as in matters of international politics. Now, heavy-handed approach with respect to domestic matters was seen in the case of Hong Kong. And regarding international politics, border tension in Ladakh with India can be said to be another area, as China is not willing to concede an inch with India. And this aspect of China will also be applicable to other opponents of the world, as China is unlikely to concede any grounds to its opponents. So, it is in this backdrop the author argues that India should not expect any concession from China, especially regarding the border tension in Ladakh and also the near future border tension in the northeast. Further, growing Pakistan China relationship might also have a significant adverse impact on India, as it can lead to a two front war with Pakistan and China. So, these are some of the arguments highlighted by the author regarding a stronger China, which might become a problem for India in the near future. Now, the next point highlighted in this article is regarding economy first for Europe. Now, here the author says that 2021 will be dominated by strong leaders such as Xi Jinping of China, Vladimir Putin of Russia, and Erdogan of Turkey. Now, the author says that because of these strong leaders, the compact of democracy is unlikely to emerge any stronger. Now, another important aspect highlighted in this article is that the author says that the fallout of UK from Brexit or even retirement of German Chancellor will not have any significant impact in world politics. An EU China comprehensive agreement on investment will be a major point of discussion in the entire Europe. And the European Union countries will try to have the maximum leverage from this particular deal. Now, another aspect highlighted by the author is regarding changes in Eurasia. Now, here the author says that Russia is showing greater interest in the affairs of countries which are in Russia's periphery or countries which are close to Russia's borders. And Russia will lose much interest in dealing with other countries such as India, and this might impact India Russia bilateral relationship. Now, another aspect highlighted here is the growing access or the growing relationship of Russia, China, Turkey on one hand, and Syria and Iran on the other hand. And when we combine the growing relation of these countries, namely Russia, China, Turkey, Syria, and Iran, then we see that this becomes a major problem for India as it will make geopolitical balancing in the Middle East a problem for India. As India have a very good relationship with Iran and sees Chabhar port as a way to the Central Asian countries. Now, there is also hope for India to improve its ties with Russia and also engage at an economic level, as India can join or be a part of Greater Eurasian Partnership, which is a Russia's foreign policy initiative to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, there are two aspects to Greater Eurasian Partnership. First, it aims to connect Russia and Eurasian Economic Union countries with China's Belt and Road Initiative. And the second part of this deal is to move beyond China and even connect EA-EU countries with Iran, India, and Southeast Asia. So it is here where India can hope to improve its relationship or bilateral ties with Russia. And India can use this opportunity of greater Eurasian partnership of Russia to improve its ties with Russia and also to balance China by integrating at economic level at EA-EU countries, RIC trilateral, that is Russia, India, China trilateral, and SCO, that is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Now, another aspect discussed in this article is regarding changes in West Asian politics. Now, here the author mentions about Abraham Accord, which is an accord between Israel, UAE, and United States of America. Now, rather than improving ties in Middle East or West Asia, it has sharpened division mainly between Saudi bloc countries and Iran and Turkey. Or overall, it has also sharpened division between Sunni countries and Shia countries. And it is here where the author says that the risk of confrontation between Iran and Israel has not decreased merely by signing of the Abraham Accord. Now, this problem between Sunni and Shia countries is also a problematic area for India, as India considers West Asia as its extended neighborhood, and it becomes difficult for India to balance out its interest in this emerging world order, especially in the backdrop of a sharpened division between Sunni countries and Shia countries. Now, regarding the confrontation between Iran and Israel, this is another problematic area for India because it will again become difficult for India to balance out its support either for Israel or for Iran, as both these countries are important for India. Israel is important for India because Israel supports India especially on the issues of terrorism and it helps to corner Pakistan and China. Whereas India considered Iran as a gateway to Central Asia, especially through the Chabahar port. However, present ties of India and Iran cannot be said to be on the same term which was earlier. Now, another aspect impacting India Iran relationship is the 25-year strategic cooperation agreement which China has signed with Iran. So, this overall shifts the Iran Turkey bloc more towards China, and eventually, this also becomes a problem for India in its extended neighborhood, as it becomes difficult for India to balance out the interest in the emerging world order. So, in this backdrop of a sharpened division between Sunni and Shia countries, Iran may enhance its nuclear capabilities, knowing that at this juncture, United States is busy in change of administration. An enhancement of nuclear capabilities by Iran may also prove problematic not only for Saudi government but also for United States under Joe Biden administration in the near future. So, if Iran goes ahead with its nuclear capabilities, it is likely that United States may apply sanction on any trade vis-a-vis Iran, and this may further impact India-Iran bilateral ties. So, overall, we can say that in the emerging world order, India faces problems both in its immediate neighborhood and also in its extended neighborhood. Now, regarding problems in India's immediate neighborhood, it can be said that there is a possibility of a two front war, and this possibility is also because of stronger China Pakistan relationship. So, it may be possible that China would be willing to engage India on both fronts. Now, another problem is regarding the border tensions in the eastern Ladakh region, and so far, hostilities between two countries have not eased. So far, no breakthrough can be said to be achieved between India and China in order to ease out the border tension in the eastern Ladakh region. Now, regarding Afghanistan and the peace process which is going on with Taliban and United States, we can say that India has been marginalized in the entire peace process, and this can be said to be a major problem for India as it has lost its strategic presence in Afghanistan. Another problem is hostility between India-Nepal relationships in the near present. And also we can say that steps taken to improve relationship with Sri Lanka, Myanmar and Bangladesh cannot be said to be visible or evident in terms of any outcome. And all of India's immediate neighborhood countries such as Nepal, Sri Lanka, Myanmar and even Bangladesh can be said to be slowly but surely drifting towards China. And it is here where another aspect of the problem has been highlighted, where it says that in case of a conflict between India and China, India's immediate neighbors may pick China because of strategic or other economic interest. So these are the problems for India, especially in its immediate neighborhood. Now, regarding problems for India in the extended neighborhood, we can say that the situation in West Asia, especially regarding the sharp division between Sunni and Shia countries, has made geopolitical balancing for India quite difficult. Further, tense US-Iran relationship will also impact India-Iran relationship as we have already discussed because of threat of sanction on bilateral trade. Now, Iran is an important country with respect to India as India sees Iran as a gateway to Central Asian countries through the Chabahar port. So, if there is any sanction imposed by the upcoming Biden administration, then it may impact India Iran bilateral ties. And it is here where China's 25-year strategic cooperation agreement might prove costly to India. Now, another important aspect is that India needs United States to counter China, but also needs to ensure its strategic autonomy. So, it will again become difficult for India to balance out its interest in immediate and extended neighborhood. Now, regarding other problems with India's foreign policies, the author says that current foreign policies pursued by the government of India can be said to be a mixture of misplaced confidence and misplaced perception, sometimes verging on hubris, that is, overconfidence. And it is in this regard the author has highlighted some of the other problems associated with India's foreign policies. The author highlights that both SARC and NAM, that is, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation and Non-Aligned Movements, have become defunct. And it is here where India was its founding members. So maybe because of this, India has lost touch with its immediate neighborhood. Next, enthusiasm with BIMSTEC have not worked so far. The author further says that opting out of RCEP, that is Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, has not helped India as most of the Asian countries are part of RCEP. Further, India's foreign policy across Asia and South Asia in particular have not paid any dividend. Further, the author also highlights that there is also a lack of understanding of the needs and requirements of sensitive neighbors like Bangladesh and long-time friends such as Vietnam and Iran. So, the author mentions that what is needed for India is to adopt workable and prudent policies without sacrificing strategic autonomy, pursuit of realistically achievable objectives, and above all, demonstration of continuity of policy irrespective of changes in nature of administration. So these can be said to be the hallmark which the author believes should be the necessary recipe for pursuing India's foreign policy. And it includes workable and prudent policies without sacrificing strategic autonomy, pursuit of realistically achievable objectives, and demonstration of continuity in India's foreign policy irrespective of changes in nature of administration. That is, irrespective of whichever government is in power, they should not change the continuity of India's foreign policy. So, these points have been provided by the author as a way forward to this very important article on India's foreign policy priorities. Now, as you can see, we have taken questions from the year 2017, 2018, 2019, and even 2020, which took place few days back. It says, what is the significance of Indo-US defense deals over Indo-Russian defense deals? Discuss with reference to stability in the Indo-Pacific region. And this had to be answered in 250 words. In the year 2019, the question which was asked was, what introduces friction into ties between India and United States is that Washington is still unable to find for India a position in its global strategy which would satisfy India's national self-esteem and ambitions. Explain with suitable examples. Further, in 2018, two more questions were asked on these topics. First, India's relation with Israel have of late acquired a depth and diversity which cannot be rolled back. Discuss. Now, this question was asked in 10 marks. The next question said, in what ways would the ongoing US Iran nuclear pact controversy affect the national interest of India? How should India respond to this situation? Now, this question was asked in 15 marks. Next, let's take up two questions asked in 2017. First, China is using its economic relations and positive trade surplus as tools to develop potential military power status in Asia. In light of this statement, discuss its impact on India as her neighbor. This was asked in 150 words. The next question was, the question of India's energy security constitutes the most important part of India's economic progress. Analyze India's energy policy cooperation with West Asian countries. This was asked in 250 words. So we see that this particular article becomes very important with respect to India's foreign policies and also understanding about various developments taking place in different parts of the world which has an impact on India. So this article becomes important both from the perspective of prelims examination as well as mains. In the prelims, it gets covered under current events of international importance, and in the mains, gets covered under international relation, especially with respect to India and its neighborhood relations, bilateral, regional, and global groupings affecting India's interest, and effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest. So, after this discussion on the lead article, let's move to the next article of discussion. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 14. It says stretched valuations threaten stability. RBI data warns disconnect between markets and real economy pose risk to the financial system. Now, in this financial stability report, there are a number of terms which you must know from the perspective of Indian economy. These terms includes non-performing assets, provisioning coverage ratio, gross and net NPA, and capital adequacy ratio. So, first of all, let us understand these important terms. Then let's go through the highlight of financial stability report as released by Reserve Bank of India. So, the Financial Stability Report of RBI reflects the collective assessment of the subcommittee of FSDC, that is Financial Stability and Development Council, on risk to financial stability and the resilience of the financial system in the context of contemporaneous issues relating to development and regulation of financial sector. It further says that the release of FSR was rescheduled to incorporate the first advanced estimates of national income for the year 2020-21 that were released by National Statistical Office on 7 January 2021. Now, this aspect of release of estimates of national income by National Statistical Office becomes an important point from your prelims perspective. So, first of all, let us understand these important terms. Now, the first term is non-performing asset. Now, any loan can be categorized as non-performing asset if it is due for a period of more than 90 days. So, a loan can be categorized to be an NPA if the person who has taken loan has defaulted or not paid back the interest along with principal for the last 90 days. So, it says that depending upon the due period, non-performing assets can be categorized as under. So there can be different kinds of non-performing assets based on for how much period of time these loans are due. So the first kind of NPA is substandard assets where loan is due for more than 90 days and less than a year. Second kind is doubtful asset where the loan is due for more than 1 year, and then there is lost assets where loss has been identified by the bank or Reserve Bank of India but the amount has not been written off wholly. So these can be said to be the three kinds of NPAs, and these three categories are based on number of days for default of the loan. Now the next important term to be understood is the provisioning coverage ratio. Now this ratio can be understood as certain part of the profits of the bank which the bank keep in order to meet any future losses. So basically, this is a kind of a buffer which is kept by the bank to meet any future losses, especially because of rising NPAs. Now, provisioning norms is a part of RBI's prudential regulation or guidelines, and under these guidelines, scheduled commercial banks have to set aside or provide certain amount of funds as a percentage of their bad assets. And under RBI's provisioning norms, these banks are required to set aside certain percentage of their profits in order to cover risk arising from NPAs. And this is referred as provisioning coverage ratio. So certain part of the profit of the banks which the banks set aside as a buffer to cover for future losses due to bad loans or NPAs. Now PCR can be defined in terms of percentage of loan amount and depends upon asset quality. So it's better if banks keeps larger amount or more amount in order to meet future losses because of bad loans. It further says that as the asset quality deteriorates, the PCR or provisioning coverage ratio increases. Now there are different categories of PCR. For standard assets where there is no default, 0.40%. Substandard assets, that is where NPA is more than 90 days and less than a year, 15%. That is provisioning coverage ratio has to be 15%. Doubtful asset, that is such NPA which has become doubtful or on which loan has been defaulted for more than 1 year, then there the provisioning coverage ratio ranges from 25 to 40%, and for lost assets it is 100%. So this is with respect to provisioning coverage ratio. Now next is gross and net NPA. Now gross NPA refers to total NPAs of the bank, whereas net NPA can be calculated as gross NPA minus provisioning amount. Further, let's understand about capital adequacy ratio. Now, capital adequacy ratio has been laid down by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision under Bank of International Settlement, which is located in Switzerland in Basel. Now, capital adequacy ratio, as described by Basel Committee, has been laid down to ensure financial stability in order to prevent failure of banks. So far, there have been three Basel norms which have been laid down: Basel 1 in 1998, Basel 2 in 2004, and Basel 3 in 2009. So, capital adequacy ratio is a bank's capital to its risk. It is also known as capital to risk weighted assets ratio. Now, the term itself mentions about capital adequacy, that is, enough capital which a bank has so that it can meet any of the risk. So, basically, capital adequacy ratio is a measurement of bank's available capital against its risks, and these risks can be any credit exposures. And the formula for CAR is capital adequacy ratio is equal to tier 1 capital plus tier 2 capital divided by RWAs. Now, RWAs here refers to risk weighted assets. So, risk weighted assets means risk which a bank is willing to take. Let's understand this through two examples. Example 1. Let's take of agriculture. Now, suppose banks have fixed risk weighted assets for agriculture at 25%. Now, since bank has fixed risk-weighted assets for agriculture at 25%, hence it is willing to take a risk of 25%, and accordingly, in worst case scenario, bank can have a maximum recovery of rupees 75. Now let's take another example where the risk weightage assets for industry has been fixed at 20% by banks. So here it means that the banks are willing to take a risk of 20% while giving loan to industries. So suppose, for example, rupees 1000 has been given as loan to industries. So here, even in worst case scenario, banks can recover maximum of 80%, which amounts to rupees 800. So this is what refers to risk weightage assets. So capital adequacy ratio can be derived through tier 1 capital plus tier 2 capital divided by risk weighted assets into 100. Now, banks in India are required to maintain a capital adequacy ratio of 9% along with capital conservation buffer of 2.5%. Now, this is not as per Basel III norms, which stipulates capital adequacy ratio of 10.5%, whereas the RBI has mandated to maintain capital adequacy ratio of 11.5%, which is more than what has been stipulated by Basel III. And this 11.5% includes capital adequacy ratio of 9% and capital conservation buffer of 2.5%. So after understanding these important points, let's go through the highlights of the report. The first highlight is that there has been decrease in GNPA and NNPA. Now GNPA here refers to gross NPA and NNPA refers to net NPA. And net NPA is calculated when provisioning amount is subtracted from gross NPA. So the report says that the gross non-performing assets and net non-performing asset ratios continue to decline and stood at 7.5% and 2.1% respectively in September 2020. And decrease in GNPA and NNPA is definitely good for the bank. The next highlight of the report is that there has been improvement in provision coverage ratio. That is, bank has enough profit to keep certain amount as provisioning coverage ratio. So it says that the provisioning coverage ratio of all banks taken together improved across all bank groups and rose from 66% in March 2020 to 72% in September 2020. So this means that banks are doing better as compared to before. And the third point is that it says there has been improvement in capital to risk weighted assets ratio as well. So these can be said to be the important highlights of this financial stability report of Reserve Bank of India.
We have come to the end of the session. Now we shall take up question for the day. Answer to yesterday's question for the day is option D. Vanadium deposit have recently been discovered from the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Today's question is this. Consider the following statements with regard to Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971. A pregnancy may be terminated till 24 weeks. Termination is permitted at any time in case of accidental or unwanted pregnancy. Which of the following statements is correct? One only, two only, both one and two, none of the above. For more practice and to judge how much you have learned from today's DNS session, you must attempt the quiz on our eLearn platform. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Take care.